The Expendables, or at least most of them, or some of them, are back for their fourth entry into a franchise which has produced decidedly mixed results. So, how is Expendables 4, or rather Expendaforbles, as the title seems to suggest? Well, it's taken 9 years for Millennium Media to come up with a fourth entry into the Expendables series, and I wager to say that action films have changed quite a bit in the near decade since the last movie, and that fact is reflected in that this installment of the series is much smaller scale than the films that came before it. Those were big summer blockbusters. This is kind of a quickie September release, and it's primarily a spin-off entry for Jason Statham's Lee Christmas, with the titular Expendables only supporting our hero on a personal mission in which they go up against a gang of mercenaries that are connected to a legendary arms dealer whose identity is unknown. Take cover! Sylvester Stallone's Barney Ross contributes little more than a cameo, which is undeniably disappointing, but I think most of us fans of the series who saw the trailers could have guessed that that was what was going to happen. Expendables 4 is still a fun enough action flick if you keep your expectations in check. The budget seems much smaller than it was on the previous films, with some pretty abysmal CGI, and most of the action is confined to a cargo ship as the Expendables infiltrate a vessel that's carrying a nuke and is commanded by a deadly mercenary played by Iko Uwais and his mystery boss, who's really only a mystery if you're really rusty as far as action movie formulas go. After about 20 minutes, if you don't have the bad guy figured out, well, you haven't seen enough action movies. The best way to enjoy Expendables 4 is to view it as a Cannon Group style B-movie. It's the kind of turn your brain off action movie that I would have enjoyed on TBS as a kid, and it's a decent vehicle for Jason Statham, who is essentially our solo lead. Sure, some of the other Expendables like Dolph Lundgren's Gunnar and Randy Couture's Toll Road are there, but they have very little to do, so you can understand why Jet Li, Wesley Snipes, and Arnold Schwarzenegger decided to sit this one out. Some new blood is added to the crew, with Jacob Scipio playing the son of Antonio Banderas' character for the third film, and 50 Cent is playing a new recruit who quickly finds himself at home in the gang. Like in the third movie, the Expendables this time are co-ed, with Levi Tran and Megan Fox among the new additions. Of everyone, only Fox has a really substantial part, with her and Christmas's on-again, off-again romance being a big part of the movie. This is actually one of the better parts of the film, as Statham and Fox play off each other pretty well, and their banter is pretty entertaining. If you caught any of her DTV movies in recent years, you know that Fox's acting has actually been quite solid lately. She's really improved as an actress since the Transformers days, and she actually fits in well with the crew. Andy Garcia is also around as the new CIA suit, filling in for Bruce Willis's Mr. Church, with him going along with the gang on their big mission and having a blast chewing a whole lot of scenery. However, the movie is really Jason Statham's baby, with Christmas briefly getting himself thrown out of the gang and forced to take on a solo mission to get back in good with his mercenary bros. Statham is given a sidekick in Tony Jaa's The Shah, while Iko Uwais is the baddie Christmas has a score to settle with. While it's a bummer that Jaa and Uwais never get to mix it up, one of the better things about this movie is that Statham, for once, gets some licks taken in the action scenes. Typically his fights are very one-sided, but here Uwais proves to be a formidable opponent when they finally go mano-a-mano, with Uwais landing enough blows that their fight is better than anything we've seen from Statham in a very long time. Again, Expendables 4 is clearly a much more modest film than its predecessors, so keep your expectations in check as far as the scale of the action goes. It's more of a contained old-school action movie in that regard, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. My biggest problem with how bad some of the CGI is, even when it's just basic green screen. While the script, which has 3 credited writers, is abysmal, the dialogue is stilted, with so much of it mumbled so badly that you may not be able to decipher much of it, although it's so bad who really cares. And the jokes are beyond corny, with 50 Cent even blasting music by, you guessed it, 50 Cent during one of the big action scenes. Still, taken as a straight-up B-movie, it's passable entertainment. In some ways, the stinginess of the budget actually makes it feel more like a Cannon film than other movies in the franchise. Director Scott Waugh keeps the action rolling at a pretty nice pace, while it also benefits from an R rating, unlike the controversially PG-13 rated third film. While it's probably too basic to really give the franchise a second life at the box office, and Stallone was likely wise to scale down his participation, at the end of the day, I give The Expendables 4 a very middling 5 out of 10. It wasn't terrible, it was somewhat entertaining in a silly way, but it doesn't live up to the other 3 movies, and it could have been a whole lot better.